You're listening to Monocle on Saturday, first broadcast on the 16th of August 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello there, it's Emma Nelson here, coming to you live from Midori House in London. This is Monocle on Saturday, and coming up on today's programme, we'll be looking through the week's news and culture with the international broadcast correspondent and former CNN Europe editor Nina Dos Santos, and friend of Monocle too. Nina, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Emma.
Just one headline.
Really, yes, it's Trump and Putin. Obviously, the Ukraine summit didn't really yield much apart from a massive PR coup from the US president's point of view. Russia has now morphed from a pariah state, it appears, to a much valued partner for the United States. And that's another interesting story. If anybody picks up a copy of The Independent, they have decreed that Pilates is now an exercise in delusion and the latest body trend that is beating women's self-confidence over the head.
Well, we'll enjoy that because we'll be talking to Monocle's Georgina Godwin. She and I both do Pilates, so we'll have a good old debate about that. Thank you very much indeed for that, Nina. And also,
we want to create a third space, a library, a chance for people to come and read books, access internet, access technology, and serve the community in ways that libraries have served us here.
We'll be hearing from the founder of a non-profit here in London aimed at bringing literature to underserved communities. And as I said, we'll be checking in with Georgina, who's at the Edinburgh International Book Festival. So lots to look forward to this half hour. First, though, a look at the headlines. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin's much-anticipated summit on the war in Ukraine has ended with no mention of a ceasefire. After more than 2.5 hours of talks in Alaska, both leaders praised relations between them, but Mr. Trump said we didn't get there. He later told Fox News that there had been no deal, but that he ranked the meeting as a 10 out of 10. Police in the Serbian capital Belgrade have again clashed with protesters demanding early elections. After months of largely peaceful gatherings, violence has intensified in the last few days, with anti-government demonstrators taking to the streets. The United Nations says 1,700 Palestinians have been killed while trying to get food aid in Gaza since late May. It says nearly 1,000 of those who died were shot near to distribution sites run by the Israeli and US-backed Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. And those are the headlines on Monocle Radio. So, a very warm welcome to Monocle on Saturday. It's Emma Nelson here behind the microphone today. Sitting next to me, Nina Dos Santos, international broadcast correspondent, former CNN Europe editor, regular here at Midori House. Welcome back, Nina. Happy Saturday to you. How are you doing? How's your week been?
Well, I've had a busy week. I've been in Devon, actually, and also in Dorset on the south coast, the Jurassic coast, where dinosaur bones and fossils can be examined in the among the strata. And that's then of course you got the ammonites. I'm just talking about the people. And I've been in Mallorca as well, in the Balearic Islands of Spain, which was absolutely glorious. I've got to say, though, the temperature was pretty similar on both. Whether that's a reflection of climate change or not, I don't know. But, I'm a bit of a heliotherm, which means I like the sun. And coming from the UK, you don't often see it. But we've been blessed with our fourth heat wave of the summer this year. And boy, am I enjoying it.
So am I. It's wonderful. Thank you. Lovely London. And thank you. Were you actually doing Jurassic stuff in Dorset?
No, it's just on the beach watching the people. That's what I was talking about.
It's incredible. And did you buy a beach?
There is a certain age differential down on the south coast in the UK. This is like, for anybody listening, the Florida of the UK, right?
It is. There is this incredible expanse just behind the coast, which, as you say, is very pretty. And they have these quite bizarrely overpriced beach huts, which are literally huts, and don't think they have running water, and they might have a bit of electricity in them, and they can go for hundreds and thousands of pounds, and everyone scratches their head. Very prized possession. But step 50 metres behind that, and you get this sea of they're almost like, when you played Monopoly and you got a house, and it was the red one, the little one, and it just had this plain square brick and then plain roof, and it's all one level because it's all bungalows. You
British
just get
post-war architecture.
British post-war.
Wonderful to behold, isn't it?
Retirement architecture.
I think Monocle needs to do a whole series on this, famous for your architectural digests.
I don't know how interesting people might find it, to be honest. If
it has its own bland. It has its own beauty in the blandness, I suppose, a certain elegant simplicity of the post-war red brick.
It's very good if your knees aren't great. I think that's the one thing going for it. But yes, I know that part of the world well. Okay, so we've now established that the south coast of the United Kingdom has lots of single-storey buildings, but a pretty coastline. Mallorca, still lovely.
Oh, yeah, that was great. Wonderful. And I know we're going to get a chance, hopefully, to talk about Spain and Spanish culture throughout the course of this next half hour. Balearic Islands always deliver. What I love about these particular islands is that whether you go to Ibiza, Mallorca, Menorca, even though this is a certain part of Spain that is an archipelago, they're very, very different. And culturally, they're completely different. Architecturally, they're completely different. Palma, for anybody who's listening and hasn't had a chance to visit, has a wonderful culinary scene, and it's also extremely beautiful. So do get a chance to stop by if you can. And Spain, economically, is on fire these days, and also touristically as well.
Indeed. Right. Okay. So we've had a lovely week. And then last night, I think we all sat down in various places to watch what we could of the summit. There was this amazing, it looked like a reality TV show set piece when they had Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump in separate big planes. And then everybody timed the entrance of Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump doing what I word was a new verb I learned last night, deplaning. And then there was a large red carpet and a long walk and a big build-up and a warm handshake. And then they got in the same car. And everybody thought that this was the great setup for the great meeting. Didn't happen.
Nothing came of it, did it?
Nothing.
But the choreography was absolutely amazing. Afterwards, the scenes that you were talking about there, Russia also released footage of US fighter planes, F-22s, escorting the Russian president's plane from inside the plane. Just the spectacle of a country that had been run by a murderous dictator under Joe Biden's time, just one US president ago, shunned by the international community. The United States, with, holding the importance of the world standard reserve currency, just deciding to flip from casting Russia aside to suddenly bringing it into the fold and allowing Vladimir Putin to pitch his country as he wished. Because remember that he wants to revive the old Soviet power. He pitched it as an equal superpower to the United States. And optically, he was able to do that in all the kind of choreography that we saw with the, deplaning, the red carpets, the warm handshakes, the claps from Donald Trump, as well as Vladimir Putin got off the plane. And then this spectacle of Donald Trump walking behind the US president. Remember that he didn't walk behind our late Queen Elizabeth, on a state visit to the UK, walking behind him, escorting him to the Beast, the US presidential motorcade, getting in with no translators present, and who knows what exactly they discussed there.
A friend of mine, we were joking last night, nothing to be joked about, but the fact that, there was a possibility of wiping a bit of polonium on the inside of the car handle for this security, the security detail for that one must have just had the biggest headache on earth. To put Putin and Trump in the same car, that was a sign of the idea of, there is no risk here. There is, we are so secure we can put two of the world's most famous people on earth in the same car and not worry about it.
Especially, as you pointed out quite rightfully, Vladimir Putin has been accused of sanctioning state-ordered killing of two people, and I covered those cases directly on British soil. One of them was Alexander Litvinenko, who was poisoned with polonium-210, which is what you're referring to. And then the other one was eventually Dawn Sturgis, a completely innocent passerby, lost her life in the UK a few years ago. But the original target was Sergei Skripal with Novichok, a nerve agent in Salisbury a number of years ago, and he survived. Yes, you're right. The spectacle of that was enormous. But you have to wonder whether this was really about Ukraine in the first place at all, or whether or not this was a Trumpian-style deal set up by his envoy, Steve Witkoff, to engage in closer business rapprochement between Russia and the United States, and to use that as a sort of carrot and stick to try and bring about peace in Ukraine. Now, will Donald Trump be disappointed? One would assume a bit, because he's tried desperately to pitch himself as the peacemaker in chief, creating peace between two intractable enemies, Azerbaijan and Armenia, just the other day. But what's interesting about this summit is the promise of potential future meetings, not on US soil that used to be Russian, like Alaska, but potentially in Moscow with Donald Trump. In the meantime, though, what we've learned in the last half hour or so is that President Zelensky of Ukraine, obviously famously shut out of this summit, will actually be hot-footing it to Washington and get the chance to have a debrief in person with Donald Trump on Monday. One hopes that his reception will be warmer this time, after he was humiliated in the Oval Office back in February earlier this year. But it probably won't be as warm as the one Vladimir Putin got.
It was an interesting moment insofar as how the press covered it. Just watching the live feed of them coming off the plane, and I think many people were trying to work out how they should word this as we watched, and some of the commentators were saying, look, this is, I think it was Lise Doucet from the BBC said, this is a red carpet and a red line that is being crossed here, that we have someone who is accused of war crimes who is actually being given a warm handshake.
I heard her say that. So I was watching that. You're right to pick up on that interesting comment. But she also pointed out quite rightfully that morally the spectacle of somebody who's wanted by the International Criminal Court in The Hague, Vladimir Putin, for alleged war crimes with regards to the abduction of Ukrainian children and potentially more, being welcomed and feted on US soil was morally a red line. She was also pointing out that neither the United States nor Russia are actually signatories to the ICC. But what does it say about the international standard? What's really concerning here, and what would have been more concerning had land swaps actually been agreed to or discussed in any material sense, would have been redrawing the concept that you can just invade another country to grab its territory, and big powers will say, oh, well, if you're big enough and you're rich enough and we can do enough business, that'll be all right. That, in the end, didn't come to pass.
No, and there were those in Europe this morning, and indeed you mentioned the fact that Zelensky's on his way to Washington on Monday. Those in Europe will be wondering whether this last meeting yesterday will have allowed Trump to be charmed. What it seems to be a positive here is that, if there is anything positive to be drawn from this, is that Trump was not charmed completely by Putin.
His body language was quite unusual, wasn't it? A few
quite
times
staid, wasn't it?
It was. He seemed very warm with the kind of, as you pointed out before, this, and very comfortable when it came to the sort of televised choreography, very charming, very welcoming to the Russian president. And then when they sat in a room together waiting, for the photo opportunity, Donald Trump suddenly looked quite grumpy. Didn't he? And I thought that was interesting in itself. But the problem is that what's been discussed and where those red lines are appears to still be something of a mystery. We know what Russia's intention is, not just coming back in from the cold economically, geopolitically, but also they want to make sure that they can crystallise the gains that they've had in the battlefield in Ukraine since 2022 and get them internationally recognised by seizing the Donbass, that territory between Donetsk and Luhansk in the east of Ukraine. They want to make sure that they can get international recognition that Ukraine never joins NATO. That didn't come to pass as yet, but as I was pointing out before, it could be a whole different ballgame if Donald Trump actually goes to Moscow.
Let's try and touch on a couple of other stories because there's still lots happening in the rest of the world, despite the focus very much being on two men meeting on a red carpet in Anchorage. Let's talk about the story that you picked up in The Guardian about an Israeli unit tasked with smearing Gaza journalists as Hamas fighters. This is in the wake of the death of, 5 members of the Al Jazeera team in Gaza.
Yeah, including their star reporter Anas al-Sharif. They were sheltering in a tent for journalists outside the Al-Shifa hospital in Gaza when that tent appeared to have been deliberately attacked. Anas al-Sharif lost his life, 28-year-old father of two. All of this team from Gaza, because international journalists have not been allowed into Gaza to report independently. They haven't been allowed in by Israel ever since the start of the war after the October 7th attacks by Hamas. And as a result, this report here by the Israeli-Palestinian outlet Plus 972 magazine has been saying that, this is essentially part of the game plan, they allege, all along, ever since that October 2023 attack by attack. This is the game plan, they allege, by Israel, essentially to taint anybody who's inside Gaza who is a journalist as a Hamas fighter. And indeed, we know that Anas al-Sharif, before he was killed, already several months beforehand, Israel had been trying to suggest that they had found documentation alleging that he was paid by Hamas, something that Al Jazeera, his employer, completely refutes. But I suppose the point is, lots of people who are familiar with this story may say, well, this isn't necessarily surprising, especially us international journalists will say, if you have a situation where only the people who are allowed to report from inside Gaza are Palestinian Gazans, it's very easy for Israel to say, well, everybody is Hamas. And that, again, is part of the intractable problem here.
It is. And it, again, as you mentioned, the intractable problem. We were talking a moment ago about the intractable problem of trying to report on what is happening with Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump, because
even on US soil.
Even on US
soil. Oh, the irony.
This is something that journalists have not encountered before. And something that is happening in Gaza is something that journalists have not encountered before. After the killings of the Al Jazeera team this week, it was highlighted that there are more journalists being killed in Gaza than there were in the entirety of the Second World War. I mean, it was one of those unbelievably powerful stories that make you think, actually, the job of a journalist suddenly becomes so politically charged and so difficult. It is impossible to report on Gaza without there being some accusation by some party that you have got it wrong. Now, there is often the thought that if you make one side furious and then the other side furious, then you have actually done your job.
Or if you just make everybody so furious, they don't know what to believe.
Exactly.
Which Hannah Arendt famously said before the Second World War, that was the sort of game plan here of autocrats. I think, you're right. It's a really difficult time to be a journalist. Don't get me on my high horse about this because I'll take up the next 20 minutes. But it's also concerning when you see, a spectacle in the United States, as you rightfully point out, where, certain favoured journalists, like, for instance, Sean Hannity, who obviously gets on very well with Donald Trump from Fox News, they scored, the coup and the scoop of the day, the debrief interview with the president himself. That has always been par for the course in journalism, particularly TV journalism in the United States, where it's quite partisan. But I think the problem here with the likes of Gaza, also the siege of Mariupol, remember, in Ukraine, and it makes us think back to the days of the Balkan Wars with Sarajevo. These are siege situations. And with regards to Gaza, there's very scant information that is able to get out. And it's a very, very complicated and dangerous picture because it's dangerous for the people who are there anyway, whether they're journalists or not.
You're listening to Monocle on Saturday. The time here in London is 9:18 a.m. Now, access to books can be life-changing, yet for many they remain out of reach. Since 2019, however, the Free Books campaign has been working to change that. It's partnered with publishers to get free books to people across the UK and Ireland and championing authors of colour along the way. Now, in honour of their 5th anniversary, the campaign is hosting a festival in London and looking ahead to their next chapter, building a library in Senegal. Well, in a moment, we'll be hearing from Georgina Godwin as she joins us on the line from Edinburgh. But first, let's hear her interview with the campaign's founder, Sophia Akel, to hear more about the Free Books campaign.
So the Free Books campaign is a non-profit community interest company that gets books to people that can't afford them across the UK and Ireland. We celebrate storytelling in all its forms.
And so tell us more, how does that actually work?
Yeah, so we've been going for 5 years and we reach our communities in different ways. So one of the main ways that we're able to do this is people can request books through our partnerships that we have with publishers. So, for example, we have partnerships with the Tate, We have partnerships with Vintage Books, and then they'll allocate a certain amount of books to us. And if you want to read any of them, you can request one for us for you to keep, no questions asked.
That's an amazing service. You also do a lot of work with authors of colour.
Yes, yeah. So we're really keen to make sure that we're using our platform to support and platform authors of colour who generally are underrepresented in the publishing industry, from the amount of marketing and support that their books get to the advances that they get, and also how they show up in the curriculum. Some research from Lit in Colour, an organisation but from Penguin Books, found that less than 1% of students will study a book by an author of colour at a GCSE level. So we're also trying to fill in the gaps where education or even like mainstream publishing are failing readers as well as writers.
Now, you actually founded this campaign yourself 5 years ago.
Yes, yeah. 5 years already.
And you're celebrating your anniversary this year, but you've also got a festival, and that happens on Sunday the 17th.
Yes, we do. So this will be our 4th annual festival, which celebrates storytelling in all its forms. It's a big day out for everyone. It's free for you to come. We also have donation option tickets, as we're planning to build a library in Senegal as part of our 5 years. The festival is full of free books for you to take home, food, workshops, talks, panels, everything for everyone. So whether you're a reader or you enjoy gaming, or if you enjoy illustration, there's something for you. And kind of there's a natural link back to the books, back to storytelling. So we're all about making stories accessible to people.
And where is it?
Yes, it's at Big Penny Social in Walthamstow. So just about 5 minutes walk from Black Horse Road Station. Excellent. And just before you go, you mentioned a library in Senegal. Tell us more. Yeah, so now that we've reached 5 years, we're starting to strategize what the next 5 will look like. And we think it's important to take our impact overseas. So in Senegal, the literacy rate is around 58%. So we want to create a third space, a library, a chance for people to come and read books, access internet, access technology, and serve the community in ways that libraries have served us here, but also the way that libraries served me as a child growing up in poverty. I think it's really important to use whatever resources you've got to benefit others. So, and also my granddad is from Senegal, so I have a personal connection to the land as well. And yeah, I'm just really excited to take this internationally.
And that was Sophia Akel, the founder of the Free Books campaign, talking to Georgina Godwin ahead of tomorrow's festival in London. Georgina's on the line from another festival. She's up in Edinburgh. Good morning.
Good morning to you.
How are you? How's Edinburgh?
It would all be absolutely fine, Emma, if I understood how the coffee maker in this apartment works.
Are you trying now? And we can try and give you a bit of live help if you want.
Yeah, I've got a lot of YouTube help, and I'm still no closer to it. So I'm doing this uncaffeinated. Okay,
right.
So just
okay. We'll go terribly gently with you, and huge apologies, and the best of luck in finding coffee in Edinburgh. I mean, I imagine the coffee scene in Edinburgh is pretty decent, though. You shouldn't have to stray too far before you get a decent cup.
Yeah, but that would mean putting my clothes on and going down 3 flights of stairs.
Okay, she's naked, everyone. How's life? Clearly warm where you are.
Oh, warm, yeah. I mean, see, this is the thing about Edinburgh. It's so beautiful. The architecture is so stunning. It's also lovely. And you come here and the sun is shining. From where I'm sitting, I can see the sea. And you think, oh, wow, I could just live here. And then you remember that the weather is like this for maybe 4 days a year. You know,
it is,
and the rest it rains.
And someone just said, I think someone said, if what was it? If Prague and New York had a baby, it would be Edinburgh.
That's fantastic. I mean, I'm just blown away by the architecture. You forget how incredibly beautiful it is, but also, I mean, not just the sort of 900-year architecture of it, but the modern stuff. And they've been really clever, kind of using glass, which doesn't jar with the ancient stuff, with the traditional build. It's such a gorgeous city. And of course, at this time of year, it just explodes. You've got the literary festival, but you've got the film festival, you've got comedy, you've got fringe, you've got theatre, art. I mean, it's just the streets are absolutely thronged by every kind of nationality. It's extraordinary.
It is absolutely amazing. And your role in in this, Georgina, apart from trying to get a cup of coffee? You're playing quite a big part in all this, aren't you, in the literary festival?
In the literary festival, I have been chairing events, but actually I'm done now. This is my first morning off. I was doing Ewan Morrison, who's this fantastic Scottish writer, and his latest book is called For Emma, and it's about AI and about sort of nanotechnology and being chips implanted in people's brains, and it's a thriller. It's a really, really good book. I was just loved that book. And then Tessa Hadley, who of course much loved writer, she's just come out with a novella set in post-war Bristol about two sisters losing their innocence. It's just a gorgeous read. And then the big star of the festival, it is his festival. He's the patron. He's the homeboy, Alexander McCall-Smith yesterday, who is just such a sweetheart. And I mean, he writes, as I'm sure you know, the 44 Scotland Street series, but also the whole Number One Ladies Detective series. So just such a joy to speak to.
The glorious thing about Alexander McCall-Smith is he's not just very, very nice from what you say there, but he's also very, very good, because being prolific does not necessarily mean that, quantity and quality match up. But with him, it really does.
It really, really does. And the thing is, it's not just books. He does so much. He sort of came up with this tapestry project, which is now, I think, the 10th most visited tourist attraction in the world for the second year running. That's according to TripAdvisor. He just got a whole community involved in making this beautiful tapestry, and people just go and look at it. He's got I think it's called the really awful orchestra, where people join because they can't really play and nobody really goes to rehearsals, and the conductor has to stop them because sometimes they're playing from completely different scores. Oh, I think that was the sound of the stove turning on, hopefully. Maybe it'll start making the coffee.
We can follow you into the kitchen if you want. You can do a sort of a live show and tell on the radio if you like. If the need for coffee is so urgent, let's go with you if you want. What else are you doing up in Edinburgh?
So I am obviously going to see a lot of theatre. Last night we went to dinner with fantastic journalist Ed Wong, who you'll know from the New York Times, Lindsay Hilson, Barbara Demick. And along with us came this woman called Priyanka Shetty, who has written and performs a play called Charlottesville. And she's done it a lot in America. And a lot of people at the dinner had been to see it in Washington, which was why she was here. And it's a kind of, I suppose, it examines the violence and the tensions and the contradictions in American society following the Charlottesville rally. And it's a kind of critique of today's America, if you like. And we had such an interesting chat, she and I, because I said, well, how do you feel about going back? What's your status? And she's on an artist visa, and she's worried.
I think lots of people are worried about that. Listen, we're going to have to let you go and do your thing, and we've also got Nina dos Santos, who has her thing to do. But actually, there's something that we mentioned, or Nina mentioned at the top of the programme, which is one of the stories that she brought in, which will strike a chord with you and me, given the fact that it's about Reformer Pilates. Now, we've had the Reformer Pilates chat, haven't we? We are both, we're fans. Is that correct?
Reformed.
Yes, to say I am part of the cult of Reformer Pilates.
I'm strapping in at 11 o'clock, everyone. I've got my kit with me. Nina, we've got Georgina on the line from Edinburgh, ready to go for her Pilates session.
After the coffee.
After the coffee. No, we might ask her to put some clothes on. But this article in The Independent is all about this cult, Georgina, that you and I are now part of. Nina.
Yes, that's right. Well, they call it an exercise in self-delusion, as I alluded to earlier on in the show, because essentially this young journalist, and it's quite a substantial article, actually. I've never actually read somebody writing so much and so passionately about Pilates, and not in a positive way. Essentially, this young journalist is saying that, the problem is that Pilates bodies don't necessarily reflect, what normal people actually look like if they don't spend 3 or 4 days in the gym. And what they're talking about here essentially is that this is the latest dogma that is affecting young people and their physiques and their confidence about their physiques, because it just feeds into that Instagrammable lifestyle. The Pilates princess apparently works out at Reformer Pilates at least 3 times a week, Instagrams all of her diet, has a glossy ponytail and occupation unknown. but appears to be affluent.
Georgina, I know that when I go to my Pilates class, I think there are quite a few Pilates princesses in there. My husband and I call them the bunny ponies because they sort of trot in as if they're just about to go and do their gymkhana, and they're all sweetness and light until you look them in the eye and then they slam the door in your face. Do you have that similar? We delight in showing them up because we don't look like that. Georgina, do you have that same thing when you go to Reformer, that people are going there because they want to go there rather than strapping their legs in and doing circles?
You know, I think perhaps my gym's just very down market, but we are all there because we want to exercise. I mean, that's the reason for it. I found the article unnecessarily hostile. I think that a lot of people exercise because they want to be healthy and not because they need to take selfies of themselves and put it on Instagram. I would never dream of putting my exercise class on Instagram. It's a private thing that you do to make yourself feel healthy. And I'm proud to say I don't own a single bit of Lululemon kit.
I think I might have bought some in a sale once. But that idea of people who want to go and take photographs of themselves, again, for me, that has never, ever crossed my mind. No one on earth needs to see me having just done exercise.
Well,
Nina?
I spend, excuse me, as you both know, because often I run into the studio with you and run out. I spend a lot of time running around Hyde Park, Kensington Gardens and the parks of London because A, it's free and it's great exercise. And I quite like the sort of, stimulation of doing something really kind of sweaty and more aerobic than Pilates. That said, I do appreciate the transformative effects that Reformer Pilates can have on your body to tone it up. And speaking of which, because of course it's summer, I signed up for some Reformer Pilates classes at a ferociously trendy gym near me in Kensington, which is actually mentioned in this article. And I went earlier this week. Couldn't walk for about 2 days afterwards. I made the mistake of putting very slippery leggings on because it was very... you'll be off the bed in a second. We've had a heat wave here. And God, that was rather embarrassing when you get them on the beds and, slipping all over the place. The instructor herself had such a beautiful blow dry of her hair that wasn't tied up and was wearing such a extravagant, tight outfit. Very tall, lean, 6 foot blonde. I found the whole experience extremely intimidating. And to be honest with you, I've got 3 more classes left before I embark upon my holiday in a couple of weeks' time.
Gigi, thank goodness for radio, because, who is not to know that we're not 2 tall, lean, 6 foot blondes? Georgina, we will let you get on with the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Good to have Georgina on the line from the Edinburgh Literary Festival. Nina, anything else very briefly that you spotted in the papers?
Well, one of the articles I really like to pivot from sort of young women stretching is to talk about old bulls having it out in the stadia of Spain. So bullfighting, Spain has long seemed out of kilter with international views on this regard versus animal cruelty. Spain has, continued to stick to its tradition of bullfighting in all its gory detail, but it's becoming more unfashionable, it appears. The Spanish government's trying to phase it out. But a feud between an old bull and a young buck, shall we say, whatever you say, 2 famous toreros, has reignited interest in this particular, tradition in Spain. And the Times has got a big piece about it. It's quite interesting. The old bull himself is José Antonio Morales de la Puebla, or Morales de la Puebla, I think. He's 45 years old. He's sort of the big figure in Spanish bullfighting of his generation, very much fated. He had some mental health problems and was gored quite badly quite recently, and was going to step back from bullfighting. But he's been challenged now by an upcoming Peruvian daredevil, 28 years old, Andrés Roca Rey. And because the two of them have spent there's so much animosity between the two of them, that's got people more interested in bullfighting. And about 2 million young Spaniards have rekindled their interest in this, partly because of this telenovela drama between these 2 toreros rather than actually them fighting the bulls.
Thank you for that so much. And that's all the time we have for today's programme. The warmest of thanks to Nina dos Santos and Georgina Godwin. Thank you for joining us on the programme. And to our producer and studio engineer, Mariella Bevan. Monocle on Saturday is back next week. I'll be here with Monocle on Sunday tomorrow. But for now, from me, Emma Nelson, goodbye. Thanks for listening. Have a great weekend.